The document sitting on your kitchen table right now, the one the funeral director told you to order 12 copies of, is the most complete identity theft kit a criminal could ever hope to find. It's printed on official paper. It looks like protection. It feels like the final act of caring for someone you loved. But every single copy you mail out this week contains your loved one's full legal name, date of birth, home address, and social security number, printed in plain text, and the person those numbers belong to can no longer pick up the phone to dispute a charge. This is called ghost identity fraud, and it starts the moment you do exactly what you've been told to do. Ghost identity fraud, or what investigators now call the dead zone, is one of the fastest growing forms of financial crime targeting grieving families in the country, and virtually no one mentions it at the funeral home. Not because anyone is hiding it, but because most people genuinely don't know it exists. By the end of what you're about to hear, you'll know exactly how it works, exactly what to do in the next 48 hours to close the window before it's exploited, and exactly what to say to every family member who will handle an estate, whether that's tomorrow or years from now. You're going to leave this conversation protected. Let's make sure of that. Here's where it starts. And it starts before any paperwork is mailed, before the estate is opened, and in many cases before the funeral has even taken place. Within 24 to 48 hours of a death being publicly recorded, automated scraping systems are scanning published obituaries. Not a person sitting at a desk. A program. A system designed to harvest data at industrial speed. It pulls the full name, the birth year, the city, the church affiliation, the surviving family members' names, everything a loving family wrote because they wanted the world to know who their person was. That obituary, written with grief and care, is to a scammer's system exactly one thing: a targeting profile. And here's the part that changes this from a sad scam to something engineered with surgical precision. The federal government maintains a database called the Social Security Administration Death Master File. When someone dies, their social security number is supposed to be flagged as inactive in that system. But that process takes time, between 30 and 90 days in most cases. That window, the gap between when a person dies and when their SSN is officially deactivated in federal systems, is what investigators call the dead zone. During those weeks, that number can still pass credit checks, trigger loan approvals, and open new retail or financial accounts with no automated fraud alert firing. The system doesn't know yet, and the scammers know exactly how long they have. Now, here's where it gets really important to understand. The piece that mainstream coverage of estate fraud almost never explains. The death certificate, the document you must share in order to close accounts and settle an estate, is simultaneously the most dangerous identity document a criminal could ever acquire. Think about that for a moment. A stolen credit card can be canceled in 4 minutes. A death certificate contains a social security number attached to a verified name, a confirmed birth date, and a real address. And the person whose number it is can no longer call the bank to dispute anything. The document that protects the estate process is also the document that hands a professional fraudster everything they need to run a clean, undetected operation. Your loved one's social security number didn't stop being valuable the moment they passed. It became more valuable because they can no longer defend it. That is the dead zone. And right now, somewhere in this country, a family is mailing out copies and has no idea any of this is happening. Carol is 68 years old and lives in Columbus, Ohio. 6 days after her mother Dorothy's funeral, she was still writing thank you notes for the flower arrangements. She had handled everything the way a careful, organized daughter does, ordered 12 certified copies of the death certificate exactly as the funeral home suggested, already mailed 2 to Dorothy's bank and 1 to the insurance company. Dorothy was 83, had lived in the same house for 41 years, attended the same church for decades, and was survived by 3 grandchildren whose names appeared in the obituary Carol had written with love. It was a beautiful piece of writing, and somewhere, an automated system had already found it. Within days of that obituary going live online, a fraudster had cross-referenced it against public probate court filings, which are public record in all 50 states, and confirmed Dorothy's social security number. That confirmation, combined with the biographical data from the obituary, was everything the system needed. A $4,200 retail credit card was opened in Dorothy's name. The social security number passed the credit check without triggering a single alert. The card was activated, charges were run, and a billing address was set up at a mail drop location across the state. Carol had no idea. The estate was being closed carefully and correctly. everything she had done was exactly right. 2 months later, after the estate was settled and Carol thought the hardest part was behind her, a collections notice arrived at Dorothy's former address. A $4,200 balance on a card Dorothy had never held. Carol spent the weeks that followed making calls, filing paperwork, disputing accounts, and paying for legal help she had not budgeted for. She told a reporter, "I did everything they told me to do. I ordered the copies. I mailed them to the right places. Nobody ever told me that mailing them was part of the problem." Carol is not naive. She is not careless. She is precisely who these systems are designed to defeat. And the moment you picture her at that kitchen table with those envelopes, you're picturing someone you already know. Here's what the numbers actually look like. The IRS received more than 56,000 reports of deceased identity theft in 2023 alone. And that figure only reflects cases that were reported and formally documented. The Federal Trade Commission estimates that families resolving a deceased relative's stolen identity spend an average of 14 months working through the process and approximately $1,300 in out-of-pocket legal costs. 14 months. While they're still grieving, still settling the estate, still trying to move forward. The FBI's Elder Fraud Report identifies posthumous identity theft as one of the fastest growing subcategories of financial crime in the country. Not because families are careless, but because the documentation required to close an estate creates an unavoidable exposure window that fraud networks have learned to target with precision. And it's getting harder to detect. The newest evolution of this fraud combines obituary scraping with AI-generated impersonation, what fraud researchers are now calling synthetic estate fraud. Once a scammer has the deceased's name, SSN, and surviving family members' names from an obituary, they can generate credible-sounding correspondence that mimics attorneys, financial institutions, or government agencies and route it directly to the grieving family. The goal is to extract additional confirmation details, trigger wire transfers, or intercept legitimate estate payouts. The FTC flagged this hybrid variant in its 2024 Consumer Alert on posthumous fraud. It is no longer enough to be careful with the paperwork. The paperwork is now the entry point for a much larger, more sophisticated operation. So let's talk about what actually stops this. Because here's the thing, the dead zone has a door, and that door can be locked. The entire scam depends on a specific timing gap, and the operation collapses if you close that gap before the first death certificate leaves your hands. The fraud needs the SSN to be live in federal systems. It needs the obituary data to reach scraping systems before anyone has flagged the name. It needs the family to be focused on grief and logistics and paperwork, which is exactly when most families are. But if you know what to do first, before anything else moves, none of that matters. The window closes, the infrastructure collapses, the fraud has nowhere to go. The single most important thing you can do is called the ghost lock, and it must happen before you mail a single copy of that certificate. Here is exactly what it is and exactly why it works. When you contact all three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and request a deceased alert on your loved one's social security number, you are placing a flag in the credit reporting system that marks that SSN as belonging to a deceased person. Any attempt to open credit in that name immediately triggers a fraud review. The dead zone window still technically exists, but you've just locked the door it leads through before the scammer's system ever gets the chance to walk in. See, here's what the scam actually requires from you. It needs that SSN to pass a credit check without a flag. That is the precise mechanism the entire operation runs on. The obituary data gives the fraudster the targeting profile. The probate filing gives them SSN confirmation. But none of that produces a usable result if the social security number is already flagged as deceased in the credit reporting system because the fraudulent application never gets approved. The ghost lock doesn't require you to catch anyone. It doesn't depend on monitoring or reporting after the fact. It removes the one thing the scam cannot function without, an active, unflagged number. You're not chasing the fraud. You're collapsing the infrastructure it depends on before it can run. Here's exactly what to do, step by step. Step 1. Contact all three credit bureaus within the first 48 hours. Equifax at 1-800-685-1111. Experian at 1-888-397-3742. TransUnion at 1-800-916-8800. The exact phrase to use is, "I am reporting the death of a family member and requesting a deceased alert on their social security number." Write that down. Say it exactly. Step 2. Within 30 days, file IRS Form 14039B, the Deceased Taxpayer Identity Theft Form, to protect against fraudulent tax returns filed in your loved one's name. Download it directly from irs.gov at no cost. Step 3. Treat every death certificate copy as a classified document. Store remaining copies in a locked location. Mail only via USPS certified mail with tracking. Never leave copies unsecured on a counter, in a bag, or in a vehicle during the estate process. Now, I want to address something directly because it matters. When you're calling those credit bureaus during a week that is already exhausting and overwhelming, you might feel like you're overcomplicating things, like you're creating extra steps during an already impossible time. You're not. The deceased alert process typically takes under 10 minutes per bureau, and annualcreditreport.com, the free federally authorized site, lets you pull a credit report for the deceased at no charge, so you can see within minutes whether any fraudulent accounts have already been opened during the estate process. 15 minutes of checking now versus 14 months of legal recovery later. That is the actual trade-off in front of you. And honestly, there's one more thing worth addressing: the obituary itself. Families write obituaries to honor someone they loved, not to think about exposure windows and fraud systems. That impulse is right and good, but consider this. You don't have to remove the obituary. You simply have to be specific about what goes in it. Omitting the full birth date, listing just the year rather than the month and day, removes a critical data point the scraping system is looking for. Leaving out the full home address removes another. If the obituary is already published with those details, contact the funeral home and the newspaper within 24 hours and request a revision. These are small changes. The protection they create is not small at all. But what if you already did that? What if the certificates have already been mailed, the obituary is live with the full birth date, and you're watching this right now with a weight in your chest? I want you to hear this clearly before we go any further. You did not make a mistake. You did exactly what the funeral home instructed, in exactly the way grieving families have always done it, with no reason to know any of this existed. These are professional operators running industrialized fraud networks, people whose full-time job is to defeat careful, intelligent, cooperative people. Being targeted is not a reflection of your judgment. It is a confirmation that you are exactly the kind of trustworthy person these systems are built to exploit. Here's what to do right now if you believe you may be exposed. Step 1. Go to annualcreditreport.com and pull the deceased's credit report today. You're looking for any accounts opened in the last 60 to 90 days that no family member authorized. Step 2. If you find anything fraudulent, report it immediately at identitytheft.gov. That is the FTC's official recovery portal, which generates a personalized recovery plan and allows you to dispute fraudulent accounts directly with creditors. Step 3. Contact the Social Security Administration at 1-800-772-1213 to confirm the death has been formally recorded in their system and to flag the SSN if that process is not yet complete. Do not assume the funeral home's automated filing has been processed. Verify it yourself. Step 4. If you receive any IRS notice in the deceased's name, or if a tax return is rejected because one has already been filed, contact the IRS Identity Protection Specialized Unit at 1-800-908-4490 and file Form 144039B immediately. Notify the executor of the estate as well, because any fraudulent account opened in the deceased's name can complicate the estate's final legal closure. These steps are not a sign that something went wrong on your part. They are the response of someone who now understands exactly how this works and who is doing the one thing that actually matters, which is acting before the damage compounds. By moving through these steps, you have not failed anyone. You have just become the most informed person in your family. Before you close this out, I want you to think about one specific person, not a general concept, but an actual face. Someone who recently lost a spouse after a long marriage and is now navigating an estate completely alone for the first time, doing their best, trusting the funeral director's instructions because that is what careful people do. Or maybe it's your own parent, the one who would order every copy suggested, address each envelope by hand, write a beautiful full obituary with all the dates and the names and the details because that is the kind of thorough, loving person they are. Picture that person at their kitchen table right now, the certificates spread out in front of them, the envelopes ready, the obituary already live online. They don't know what you know. Share this with them. Not because it's a video worth sharing, but because they are a person worth protecting. One phone call where you say, "I just learned something and I need you to hear it before you mail anything." That is worth more than anything an estate attorney will mention in passing during those first overwhelming weeks. The families who end up spending 14 months untangling posthumous identity theft are not families who didn't care. They are families who simply didn't know in time. Now you do. And so can they. The people we love deserve to be protected even after they're gone.